Cassidy, and I'm here to talk to you today about this book right here, The Theory of Everything. The Theory of Everything by J.J. Johnson. First of all, the reason I picked this book up was because of the back. Look at the back of this book. It's got like a pie chart on it that's like, this book contains 15% Ruby the Wonder Dog, 10% healing, 5% possum. Like, who wouldn't pick this up? Like, that's so intriguing, right? Like, I read like the first sentence of the blurb on the inside, like, yeah, I'm checking this out, like, now. The main character's name is Sarah. Now, the first impression that I got of this narrator was awesome. She's very spunky, very sarcastic, very, as she would put it, snarky. She calls herself snarky. She's very, relatable. She's supposed to be 14, 15. I'm 15, so of course I'm gonna say that, but like, I feel like anyone could really relate to this character. First chapter, I was in love with this narrator. She has a very realistic way of viewing things. Like, she'll tell you how it is. In the beginning, she makes tragic things funny and funny things tragic, you know, like any dramatic teenager, I suppose. But the fact is that she has a way of doing that where you still sense the conflict there, you know. Sarah mentions in passing that her best friend Jamie is dead. You know, she's just talking about her friend, oh, by the way, she's dead. Like, oh, okay, good to know. At least I didn't personally immediately think, oh, that's what this book's gonna be about. She has like abbreviations, which are like SJD since Jamie died, or BJD before Jamie died, how like everything's changed since then. She feels guilty about it, which, no, everybody says, you know, it was a freak accident and everything, but the whole time she's like, it's my fault. If I hadn't been involved, if I hadn't been there at that time, then she would still be alive standing right next to me. There's a sense of suspense immediately. From the beginning of this book, Sarah is broken. You can like feel it, that she's departed from her best friend, and to see her pick up the pieces of her life and then until the very end, just, it was so beautifully written. It is so realistic. One thing I will always say that makes a book amazing is the ability to fall through the pages and into the book. Like, my creative writing teacher had a way of putting it where he said, you know, he was not in that room reading whatever book. He was in the story. Like, he's unaware of everything going on around him when he reads a good book, and that is exactly what this did. You know, someone would have to call my name like 12 times for me to realize, oh, what? I'm not in a school right now. I am outside with my family. What? It's you can really fall through the pages and into the plot, and that is what makes a great work of fiction. It's wow. If I had to pick a favorite part of this book, I couldn't, but a favorite aspect of this book would have to be the characters. The conflict is great. The way the plot is delivered is great. But there's something about the characters that's just so great. There's Sarah, who's the sarcastic, sassy narrator, which everybody loves. And then there's Jamie, you know, her best friend, who's dead since the beginning. So I could say we get the least amount of information about. We don't really get to form our own opinions about her exactly, but we do at the same time. I'll talk about her more in the spoilery section. Jamie has a twin brother who doesn't know how Jamie died. He makes friends with Sarah simply because, I don't want to say because, but that's kind of the reason that they start to become friends. Then Sten, Sarah's boyfriend, I can't say anything about him without spoilers. And of course there's the dog, the 15% Ruby the Wonder Dog, I think I told you, yeah. Ruby is the Wonder Dog. If she hadn't run away that one time, I feel bad. That might have been considered a spoiler. That's it for not spoiling things. So when you have read this book, The Theory of Everything by J.J. Johnson, looks like this, read it, come back, and finish watching this video because, oh my goodness, it is worth reading. It is so worth reading. And we're back. back. I hope you enjoyed this book as much as I did. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is the characters. Like I said, my favorite aspect of this book was the characters by far. There's Sten, who never really get a conclusion on, which, I don't know, people like to complain about that, but I kind of liked it. You know, in any young adult novel, you've got your Romeo and Juliet that finally get together at the end. It's like, oh, good. Or, you know, he breaks up with her and she goes and has an emotional meltdown, and then it's just, oh, poor girl, but she'll move on. But see, we don't really get that. And I think that's pretty great. I don't know. Leave your thoughts about that in the comments, because I feel like that can be very controversial. Jamie, I feel like, was a very sweet girl. Like, we don't really get anyone's point of view except for Emmett's and Sarah's about Jamie when she was alive. And then we get that one flashback that, I don't know. Rosemary, I didn't talk about her. She's one of my favorite characters by far. She befriends this person who has been outcast because of something that she couldn't control. I don't know, I feel like everybody needs a friend like Rosemary. She covers for her when Sarah needs it. She was really a great person in general. I loved her character, 100%. She was very well developed, just like everybody else in this book. I mean, wow. She was definitely a favorite character. And the one thing I do want to talk about is young adult novels in general. There are a few mistakes that all young adult novels make. Those mistakes include too much graphic violence or graphic deaths, present tense that will always bother me. I don't know. I don't like present tense. I'm sorry. Don't judge me. Too much talk about romance or sex or boy craziness. No. And trying really hard to be deep and have a moving story that makes everyone cry. If you're trying, you can't do it. Only complaint I have is present tense, because it did none of that. See, the one scene we get where Jamie's dying, it wasn't graphic, and I think that's because Sarah's narration, because she's telling the story, Sarah as a character doesn't want that much detail. She doesn't want to think about it. The fact that we don't get a lot of graphic and then she was crushed or whatever, it's a terrible death. Can you imagine? Ugh. It wasn't graphic because it was a character choice. This book had the rare ability to touch on subjects literally as deep as the meaning of life. Sarah's a nihilist. Like, she thinks, you know, life is insignificant and all. It touches on a lot of topics, like, you know, there's the guilt, there's death, there's life, everything in between. I thought that was fantastic, but it's not, since it's from such a well-developed character's perspective, it wasn't trying to be deep, and if it was, well, don't tell me that. Too much talk about romance and sex. I thought it was gonna get there. I thought it was, but it didn't. It didn't quite cross the line. It was borderline at one point, but we all know the scene I'm talking about, but it worked out. So overall, this book is one of my favorites of all time. 5 stars on Goodreads, probably a 97% if I had to put it on a percent scale. The characters were very, very well developed. The conflict was just A+. It hooked me very, very well. The cover even, it's great. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone. I mean, it's contemporary fiction, it's a novel. I'd probably recommend it to anybody like 14 and older, maybe 13. Maturity level is, look, I love it. But like I said, it never crossed that line. And I read this in like 2 days. The Theory of Everything, J.J. Johnson. Read it, love it. Leave some comments telling me what you thought of the book. If you agree, disagree, or anything that I forgot to mention that you loved or hated about the book, let me know in the comments. Like it if you liked it. Like for this pie chart. Like for 15% Ruby the Wonder Dog. Like for 5% Possum. So if you want to see more videos, of course, you can subscribe down there. I reviewed this very, very thoroughly on Goodreads. Click on the book, and you can see it there. Like, comment, subscribe, click the link. I think I covered everything. Thanks for watching. Looks like this. Looks like this on the back. Pretty iconic. I assume there have been no cover changes since this, or this isn't a cover change. You wouldn't think that something this thick could have such a great story, like, compacted into it for, like, pages of magic. Sarah mentions in passing that her best friend Jamie, Jamie? It is Jamie, right? It's Jamie. Okay. I got scared that I got the character's name wrong. That was like Jemiah or something. One fabulous story just compacted into like 200 pages, 300 pages. And I read this in like 2 days, which isn't the fastest I've read a book, but 2 days is pretty. She has abbreviations: SJD, since Jera died, Jera. Is that Sarah and Jamie's ship name? Oof. Oh, what did you do? You had nothing to do with this, did you? Like, it's... I was in the library with my friend Caroline, you know, just browsing around, because that's what I do in my free time, you know. Summer. Okay, it's a really good book.